This episode of Reality Escape Pod is brought to you by Morty, Cogs by Clockwork Dog, Buzzshot, and Patreon supporters like you. Hey, escape room owners! Are you sick of trying to figure out the marketing puzzle? Buzzshot's got you covered. It's an all-in-one solution for powering business growth and improving the customer experience. They offer a ton of pre- and post-game features, including waiver management, creating incredible branded team photos, and streamlined review management for Yelp, TripAdvisor, Google Reviews, Facebook Reviews, and they offer integrations with Cogs and Morty. So David, you actually used Buzzshot to help you run the game for Recon. How was it?
We've used Buzzshot a couple of times over the years to run the Recon game, and we do it because it works really well, but also because it is super easy for us to train our staff how to use it. I had a mentor who once said to me, the most expensive word in business is education. It is costly to train your employees, and it is so easy to train people up on Buzzshot. That's one of the core reasons we used it, and that's why it went so well as part of the Recon game.
Streamline your marketing and grow your escape room business. REPOD listeners get an extended free trial and 20% off your first 3 months with no setup fees or hidden charges. Visit buzzshot.com/REPOD, that's REPOD, to learn more.
Welcome to the Reality Escape Pod, your lifeline when you need a getaway from the real world. I'm David Spira, alongside my co-host, PG Law. Together, we're exploring immersive gaming from all angles, and we'll be joined by guests who really know their stuff. Today's season finale guests are Francine Boon and Victor Van Doorn of the legendary Sherlocked in Amsterdam. For a decade, Sherlocked has been pushing on the boundaries of puzzle-driven experiences, from escape rooms to tabletop games to virtual games and more. They have had their hands in a variety of medium-defining work. Welcome, Francine and Victor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Thank you, PG.
I'm glad we finally got you on because David has wanted to have you as a guest on the show for forever. But even more than that, he really wanted to play The Alchemist, which you spent a very long time building. So he was, in fact, holding this guest spot hostage.
Good on you, David.
He was holding this spot hostage until you were able to finish the build. But I'm glad you're finally here. And David had a chance to go play The Alchemist.
It was such a good motivator, David. Thank you.
Yeah, not only that, when we knew you guys were coming over, we were like, okay, sprint, we want this finished, because not you launch with version 1.0, but that in my heart feels like 0.7. So you gave us lots of motivations in multiple ways.
Well, congratulations on escaping my basement. There's still a few creators who are locked up there waiting to finish their games.
Who else is there?
Oh, Haley and Cameron Cooper.
Of course.
So our season finale guest from last season, Tommy and Terry from Hatch Escapes, were also in the basement until they finished the ladder.
Until it hatched.
It was a good crowd in that basement. I'm sad now that we're out.
Yeah, exactly. It's so cold here.
Good company. Victor holds a really special place in the history of this podcast because he was technically the first guest in the pilot way back in 2018, like 3 years before we actually started releasing anything. Back when it was the Room Escape Pod, when Lisa was co-hosting it with me, and when we didn't really know what we wanted this thing to be when it grew up. We made a single episode. Half of it has been lost to time, but the first half will be made available to patrons. So if you want to check that out, Victor is a great guest, and I was an adequate interviewer.
OG, the original guest.
Let's start to dig into this stuff. Sherlocked was the first European escape room company that I became aware of when people started coming back from Amsterdam and telling me that I needed to go play your game, The Vault. What are the origins of Sherlocked?
The origins come from me, my co-founders Tristan and Micah, very quickly joined by a fourth co-founder, Pim. And we encountered escape rooms in a very early form, me in 2012, on a date in London, a week after Hint Hunt had opened there, which was the first internationally scaling franchise from Budapest. So this was June 2012. A friend of ours, Mos, tagged me in a post saying, like, Victor, you're always living adventurously, which is to a degree true. I love climbing rooftops and that kind of thing. And he said, this is like a real life adventure that you can step into. And he was right. And I was totally distracted from the date. I was a bad date because I was just so enamored with the format.
It wasn't a date with me, just to be clear.
Yeah, this is a lovely girl named Hannah. And Hannah played a very important part in my life by having this date together at Hint Hunt. That never ended up in anything except we're friends now. But I did fall in love with the format, except for I was working on another company at the time, just starting that up. And so I was trying not to get distracted. But then a year later, a friend of mine, Tristan, came across Hint Hunt again in Cape Town. And it had not opened yet. There was a box of flyers outside with just an example flyer tacked on. And he stole that example flyer saying, hey, this looks interesting. And then he came back and said, this is totally something for us. And then I was like, yes, I know. I did it a year and a half ago. And now maybe it's the time. So then we went to London. We played Hint Hunt again. We played Clue Quest. And we felt two things. One, it's a lot of fun. And two, there's so much potential to make it better. We're all from an artistic background. I was a filmmaker before. Tristan was a music producer. And Micah had studied opera and art history. So we had a lot to bring to the table. And then we created The Architect with a focus on storytelling, high production objects, and a blend of fiction and reality, trying to make things look and feel real.
I have to be really grateful for all of the terrible escape rooms that started off in the early years, because most of our best creators got into the business because they played a bad escape room and wanted to make it better.
Yeah. And the fun thing is, I don't believe it actually needs to be a bad escape room to spark that, because creative people are always going to see opportunities to do something better. The Netherlands has a relatively high level of games in general. There's bad games here too, but I think the bar was set by the first few companies, including Gijs, Alex, and Eric, relatively high, and I think it went up from there. So I don't think it needs to be a bad game to inspire creative people to make them better.
Yeah, no, that's true. Or sometimes there's just one small thing that you want to improve upon.
Yeah, I mean, there's always something to improve.
So what were your backgrounds before you got into creating escape rooms?
I am actually a sociologist, which is a bit weird to get into escape rooms then. But I realized after meeting Victor that this was actually a profession. So I realized that my whole life, have created experiences for other people. I've been an experience designer in many different ways, but I never realized that was actually something that you could do for a living. And then I met Victor, and Victor had Sherlocked already because I joined 5.5 years ago. And you showed me this whole new world of experiences, of things that you can create. I think I realized this when we went to London and we went to Chambers of Flavor, which is a dinner experience. And at some point in this experience, I was having a course of food in a glass house with giant puppets in the shape of flesh-eating plants that were doing a skit. And it was hilarious. And I looked around and I thought, wow, someone dreamt this up, then decided to build it, and then people started to pay for it. So this can actually be something that you can do for a living. Why not? I saw what you were doing and I got super enthusiastic about it. And then at some point I thought, maybe I can do this too in this level. And I asked Pim, actually, your co-founder and friend, because I wanted to impress you. And then I designed this whole quest from Amsterdam to Rotterdam. And I designed the whole treasure hunt for you. It's like a date, elaborate story that lasted the whole day with a night over. It almost went wrong because Victor almost ended up in Moscow by mistake, but managed to keep him in the Netherlands. And it was really fun. And I realized like, oh, I have an intuition for this. And I actually feel at home in this place. And I quit my job at some point. I was working for local government and I was dying a little bit inside because it was not creative and I couldn't really do my thing. So I quit my job and I got a couple of job offers. And one of them was from Victor saying, hey, you want to
go lowest run the paid one.
The lowest paid one with the most fun.
It coincided with the moment where my three co-founders each were going their own way. Pim was moving to San Francisco. Mike had already left for the US and Tristan had a burnout. And so we were looking for people to replace these three co-founders, and it turned out to be one lady here, Francine. Replace 3 guys.
These days, it feels like you were always a part of Sherlocked, Francine. What was the adjustment period like for you and for the organization as you came in and started to become such a core part to the work that is done?
Oh, that's a nice question. Thank you. So for me, I think we were already in a relationship. So we wanted to take that very seriously because now we would also start to work together. So we said we're going to do one trial project. And I asked if I could have a mentor, and that was not Victor. So I got Pim as my mentor. And we did the Rijksmuseum escape game in 2019 as my first project. So that was actually the first thing I led the design of. And it went really well. It was really fun. But also we constantly checked in with each other like, hey, how is it to work together? How is it to give me the freedom to lead this project? How is it to work with all these other designers? And I noticed that very quickly during that project, I learned the lingo. I learned how to deal with different people from different backgrounds. And I noticed that I had this knack for it that worked, that I could intuitively fix problems. And by the end, it was, I don't know, how was it rewarded with a 9.3, I think, by the audience. And we had 10,000 people go through it in 9 weeks. So it was crazy. It was a crazy first project to do.
Trial by fire, because for the people who don't know, the Rijksmuseum is like our equivalent in the Netherlands of the Met. It's super prestigious. Rembrandt's Night Watch is there. So it's also high security, high stakes.
That's a lot of trust you put in her for that, and looks like it paid off.
Paid off double.
Yeah, it was really nice because by the end of that, I also felt super confident. I was like, wow, I pulled this off. So now I think I can do the rest too. And then from there, it was also nice, I think, because there was a fresh pair of eyes on how the company was run, because it had 4 captains before and now it basically had 1. And then me getting into the shoes of the second captain. And yeah, it took, I think, 1.5 years. And then I really felt I can make decisions. I can also decide where we're going with the company.
Yeah, and I think it was important for the team to see you disagree with me.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't feel like these are 2 hands on the same stomach.
The one thing we have to be careful with, though, is because we are also living together, is that sometimes in the creative process, you go home and then something clicks. And then we are very close to each other. So we can very quickly make decisions or build on ideas from during the day. So if we then get back the next day, we always have to be careful to bring the rest of the team along in our decision-making process, because we just did that over dinner and they weren't part of it. So that's one of the things you have to be careful with.
Thankfully, the other thing that we also have to be careful with is not doing too much work during dinner, because we now have a rule that if after hours we want to talk about work, we always check, do you have headspace for a work thought? And oftentimes the answer is no.
Yeah, Lisa and I have a very similar problem set, although especially with the first one, where we have to make sure that we catch the team up with things that we have been working on our own. But also, we do all of our room escape artist work, or at least Lisa does all of her room escape artist work off work hours. So for us, if she's working, it's at night with me. And there is not a great dividing line between free time and work time unless we make a dividing line. And it's always arbitrary.
So I wanted to talk about the Vault a little bit, which is one of the games that David insisted I play when I went over to the Netherlands. And for very good reason. You know, I know that it was one of the first games in the Netherlands or in Europe to make use of performers. And it has probably the coolest onboarding sequence that I had ever experienced. It is really unusual, I imagine, especially back when it first opened. So what were some of the things that influenced you to design that type of interaction in the beginning? And what was influencing your early design decisions?
I have 2 chapters to that. So the experience already starts just after booking. So the story starts, you get 1 confirmation mail, and then from there, the story starts, you get a message saying, be in this location at that spot, make sure you're not followed. And from there on, there is no mention of a game, no mention of a booking. The vault is a heist experience, and it's built inside a historical vault complex with actual freaking heavy vault doors. Beautiful, but
so heavy.
Yeah, so heavy, gorgeous golden brass doors, but very hard to open. There's these dial locks, rotation locks, which actually in America, people are more understanding of how they work. People who went to high school in the United States know from high school lockers, but in the Netherlands, nobody ever used that system. And in the early version of the Vault, we had to put like an instruction manual for these kinds of dial locks in there, and we always hated that. And then we met a young team who were excited to make a 3D mobile game with us. And then Pim had the insight of saying, okay, if we're going to make a mobile game, it needs to be to train people to use these dial locks. So we did. We made like a 15-minute free iPhone and Android game, which is available on the app stores, to focus really on doing that motion. I think we managed to make it fun. And the people who play this game and show up at the Vault and are faced with these dial locks, they intuitively already know how to open it because they've practiced it without actually thinking they were practicing on the phone. So that's one innovation there, using the pre-game area to onboard people, get them into the story, immerse them, but also prepare them for some of the things that they're going to be facing. That's not really the claim to fame, though. The claim to fame is that when people arrive, they don't arrive at our doorstep. It's around the corner outside of our building, and they have to do something very cinematic and a little bit suspect to get their gear kit, which is, of course, a trope from the heist movie genre, to get your gear. Yeah, you do it in a very exciting way. People love it. And because it's in the real world, people, from that moment on, anything goes. So their expectations have been cracked open and their framework has been cracked open. And from then on, everything's real. Every person passing by is perhaps an extra or someone who could maybe pass them a message, which makes it very immersive and very exciting. And then the next thing is they show up at our door and an art curator, an art gallery curator opens the door, and sometimes slightly less playful players, they will say, I'm here for the vault, or for the escape room. And then the curator looks at them saying, there's no escape room here. I'm sorry, you have the wrong address. And then shut the door in their face. And then the players quickly realize, oh, we are visiting an art gallery. Try again, knock, knock. Yes, we have a private booking for the gallery. And then they are let in.
Which is funny because we got a review at some point saying, these people are very rude. They closed the door in our face. And then we were like, yeah, that was the point. So it's also a bit like we have to
yeah,
play.
Not everyone loves it, but enough people love it. And we love it too. That's also important.
And it's a beautiful example of how we try to blur the line between fiction and reality as much as we can. And for some players, sometimes we do it a little too much, like players with that review. But also we had a Saudi team that abandoned the quest very early on because they said, this feels so real. We think you actually make us steal something now. So we can't continue with this.
They were afraid of being set up.
Yeah.
It was a scam.
It was a scam. Yeah, they were very afraid that it was a scam and they abandoned it. And we never heard from them again.
No refund request. They just didn't want to have anything to do with it.
That's really interesting.
In 9.5 years, that only happened once.
One of the things that I really appreciated about this onboarding process, and it was and still is one of the biggest issues I have with heist escape rooms in general, is that they tee it up as you are these world-class thieves, the best of the best, hired to go and do this stealing. But you show up with no tools. You have nothing of your own. You have to go in and MacGyver, find whatever equipment you need on site. And that has always rung false to me. And I loved the way that the Vault didn't just invite you in, but started to build some character for you and gave you the opportunity to build it over the course of the early interactions. You kind of have to become the people that you're told you are. And I like that. I like that a lot.
I'm so glad to hear that.
I also like that it knocks us off of our game a little bit. I'm sure it's cool for like new players, but even for experienced enthusiasts, you get a little bit cynical, you know what to expect, and you're going through the motions when you're first starting a game. And suddenly the onboarding itself is so different. We were like confused. We didn't really know what was happening. And it was exciting for somebody who's experienced so many games.
That's wonderful. That's exactly what we wanted to do. And we even have a plan for doing the same for the Architect, our oldest game, putting them on the wrong leg a little bit to mess with people's minds a bit more if we can. But we have, especially for the Alchemist, we slated it for version 1.5.
I look forward to all of these improvements. Your games are all located within the massive and historical Amsterdam Stock Exchange building, which I have to imagine is an expensive proposition. Why make games in this place?
Well, because it is very expensive, that's true. But also, you have this beautiful set already there for you. Nothing feels as real as the real thing. if we create a heist experience in a historical vault complex, then nothing will feel as real as opening or working with these actual heavy doors. We can't build them. We couldn't even have imagined these doors. I mean, you've seen them. They're very intricate. So it gives us a basis to build on that we can then distill with story and with experience, but we don't have to get you into it already from the outside. So if you come to a very ugly building somewhere in the middle of nowhere, then we will probably have to work really hard to get you to suspend your disbelief into believing that this is actually a real vault complex. But now we can just get you in and you're already in. And then we can make you focus way more on story and experience and puzzles, etc.
Yeah, we love realism. It's an expensive criterion to have. And it's also tricky because we pay more rent than any escape room I know. But the building could get more for our spaces. So it's in this tricky limbo or this tricky dance where we feel like we are stretched to our limit and they also feel like they're stretched in the other way. So it's a difficult relationship. We have a good relationship with the people of the building, but it's for them tricky to have us there. And it's for us sometimes tricky to be there. But for 10 years, it's felt very worth it.
Yeah. We're in the dead center of Amsterdam, which means that it is literally 10 minutes walking from Central Station. And that is also very beneficial for us. We get a lot of tourists. We also get a lot of day trip people from the Netherlands because it's just easy to reach us.
Yeah.
I know that I can convince people to go to you and play your games when I can't convince them to go out and visit the Dome or visit Gijs in Dark Park unless they're proper escape room players. But the casual players, I can be like, hey, there's this game. It's called The Alchemist. It's super easy to get to. Just trust me, roll the dice on it.
That's true. I had a friend that just made a trip to Amsterdam. She was like, PG, we want to do an escape room on our trip. Can you recommend one? And I was like, well, go to The Alchemist. It's so easy, because casual players aren't really going to go out of their way to go to the Dome or something. So they tried to book The Alchemist, but unfortunately it was way booked in advance already.
Thank you, though, because PG, you have not played it yourself yet, have you?
No, I haven't. I'll have to make a trip back at some point.
Thank you for recommending it on faith.
It's an easy leap of faith. We're taking a moment to thank our sponsor, Morty. Morty is a free app for discovering, booking, tracking, and reviewing escape rooms, haunts, and other immersive social outings. Morty is available for all to use on its fantastic website experience, iPhone and Android apps. I believe in Morty so much that I have a stake in it as an advisor. A lot of people don't know what Morty is like as a company. And I've spent a lot of time giving them advice, meeting with lots of folks from their team. So the biggest thing that I could tell people is that this is a small team. It's only a handful of people. It's 3 engineers, and they're making improvements on 4 different platforms: iOS, Android, the website, as well as the business products. It's a small team managing a lot of different things. Andy, the founder, he works all the time on building a better community and building a better platform. He's always improving Morty. And on top of that, he doesn't really get paid for it. I can relate. He is working on this thing all the time. He's only taken a salary for a small portion of Morty's existence. He is really working towards making sure that this thing is sustainable, that it is built well, that it is built in a way that supports the community and isn't gross and parasitic.
And what I love is that it really does support the players. All of the core features, the ones that I mainly use it for, those are free on Morty. Players do not pay a booking fee when booking through Morty. It's the same price as you would pay on the company website.
All this is why I happily became a Morty member, sent a little bit of money their way, and I plan to do it every year because I benefit from Morty and I want to support that. It's really hard starting a small business when everybody wants everything to be free. And that is really the best way that you can go and support creators of software, of content, is to support them directly. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is. You can learn more at morty.app/repod. That's REPOD to sign up and get a special badge for our listeners. Link and details in the show notes. Congratulations on the overwhelming success of the launch of The Alchemist. I personally, just speaking for myself, played it, loved it, and the fact that it is open has unlocked this REPOD episode for you and for all of our listeners. I'm not a huge fan of superlatives, and my answer to the question, what is your favorite escape room, shifts from moment to moment. But my current most common answer at this moment is The Alchemist.
What? Really?
Truly. It's a wonder factory. It is filled with impossible moments and machines, and it made me weep with joy during the finale each time I watched it, and I think I saw the finale 3 times when I came to visit. I know that I have said this to you before, but I wanted to document saying it to you. I just love this game, and it feels like a vision into the future of what I want escape rooms to be.
Thank you so much.
Wow.
That is very comforting and heartwarming to hear.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the game. Why make something so ambitious?
Speaking personally, in 2019, it could have gone both ways, where we had an offer to be acquired and we explored that. And then while we were having those conversations, something felt off for me. It felt wrong, because I still wanted to make something that we've been talking about for years, which we called the Magic Room. And I wanted to make it in this building. I wanted to make it under the brand of Sherlocked. And every time I thought to myself, well, we have this offer now. It's a nice exit, and then everyone can go their way, and I can still make what will become The Alchemist. But something felt wrong with that. And that actually made me want to stay with Sherlocked and buy out the other partners at the time. It was not a small thing. So that planted a wish to really make it count with The Alchemist. In 2015, we had the experience of doing something very special with the Vault, which then reverberated throughout the industry, and we enjoyed the fruits of that. But then, of course, it was years later, and we really had to throw the kitchen sink at it if we wanted to even have a chance at that. We started writing down what are all the crazy ideas that we would probably say no to under any other circumstances, but let's see how we can make them work.
Yeah, it really felt like, as in Dutch we would say, you had an egg to lay in this one. I really wanted to support that. And also, just to be honest, we need to challenge ourselves continuously, else we get really bored really quickly. So the ambition is also about challenging ourselves, like what can we make? How cool can we make something? If we get a no, then we want to make it a yes, and these kinds of things. Not in everything in life, but with designing these things, yes. And I really love that we went for it. It's been a really big struggle. And I think it's been recon that I, for the first time, could feel happy about having done The Alchemist. And also the first time I could hear praise without having to cry. It took a long time. But now I look back on it and I'm like, wow, we made that. And I'm really proud of it. And I think I would not have felt that way if we wouldn't have pushed ourselves to create something that we thought was impossible.
Yeah. So maybe we would still have been near burnout, which we came very close to during this process, which was 4 years long, but maybe not the redemption of it being very close to what we'd imagined.
When I played, I remember speaking to you both the day after we played. I think we grabbed breakfast before Lisa and I caught a flight.
Yeah.
And I could see how delicate you both were, the state that you were in after launching this game. And I remember realizing initially it didn't occur to me, because the game, from my perspective, as just a person who walked in and played it and has played your other things, this was a marvel. And it was, to me, very self-evident. And I could tell as I was talking to you both that in different ways, it felt like, Francine, it felt like you were really a little bit haunted by the process you had to go through to get to this place. And for Victor, it felt like you were a little bit haunted by what the game isn't yet, the things you want it to be. And realizing that, I'm glad to hear you both getting to a place where you can appreciate it for what it is, for what you made, which is incredible.
You played a part in that. You and Lisa and Nick Moran playing together and us tinkering with that ending and Nick saying, you just need to add this voiceover and you're done. He actually messaged me the next week. Is the voiceover added? I said, yes. Then you're done. Stop working on it.
Which I loved because Victor kept on going in the process.
Yeah, it was not healthy.
Yeah, but it really was true. Like after you played and we had that reflection session, I think both of us, we went home and we talked about it and we both felt, wow, this shifted something major in how we approach this game. So thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome.
We had a conversation about it back then saying, from my perspective, I needed us to stop working on it to get it to a point where it could launch, or that we would be happy with a launch. I needed it to be finished and that we would give it the stamp of finished and then we could continue tweaking. And that was a big psychological thing. And I think your visit helped us do that. And then at Recon, we had another major shift, which was that after speaking, and I think I was talking to Tommy walking to lunch. And then someone asked me, what are you going to make next? And it was the first time that I thought, ooh, I'm actually excited to think of something new now. And it was the first time after launching The Alchemist that I actually felt like, oh, what would I make next? How would I approach that? What would I want to do? And it was really good. And I thought, nice, I'm back.
Yeah. Until that, the reaction was always, I want to think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. The next thing I want to make is my bed and climb into it.
Exactly.
Do you want to integrate tech into your game but don't really know where to start? Are you looking to take your experience to the next level with theatrical lighting and sound cues? Cogs by Clockwork Dog is an easy-to-use platform that will automate your escape room and immersive events. Their plug-and-play hardware works seamlessly with their software, so you can create a game with high-tech puzzles that will reliably trigger, complete with sound and lighting effects. Whether you're an absolute beginner or a seasoned pro, Cogs has a solution for you.
Hey there, this is Grant Lukey, creator of the game Wizard's Treasure in Los Angeles, California, and I'm here to talk to you about Cogs. I remember the first time I heard about Cogs, it was while listening to the Reality Escape Pod. It really intrigued me, but at the time, I wasn't sure if it was something that would be useful to my workflow. I love making my own custom props, overflowing with tech, so I wasn't really in the market for a system that would make tech more accessible to me, but I really liked the showrunning software that Cogs offered. While looking into Cogs a bit more, I discovered a piece of hardware they make called the Isolated Breakout. This adapter allows you to connect any custom Raspberry Pi or Arduino project to the Cogs system with the ability to send signals in either direction to do whatever you want. I'm talking puzzle overrides, light and sound cues when things get solved, the ability to tune the difficulty of a puzzle mid-game, status reports of inputs sent back to the game masters, and so much more. The only limit is how you decide to interpret a signal, and you can get really creative with that. All of a sudden, I stopped seeing Cogs as just a product making it easier to incorporate tech, and instead started to recognize that Cogs can meet me where my skill level is at and level up my experiences even further beyond what I was previously capable of. Realizing that I could have both fully custom Arduino-based props and the next level show control software from Cogs to handle all of my lighting, sound, video, and game master control, I started to get really excited and inspired about the possibilities of what I could make. I also seriously wished that I knew about Cogs before I built my last game. So, anyways, if you also thought Cogs wouldn't be super useful to you since you already have a solid understanding of tech, I highly recommend taking a second look at their Isolated Breakout and advanced developer options to see if it could be the right fit for you. Personally, I'm very excited to be building my next game with both fully custom props and Cogs.
REPOD listeners get 50% off the Cogs starter set, plus free shipping to the US. Use code REPOD at checkout. That's REPOD. For any questions about using Cogs or integrating tech into your escape rooms, make sure to join the vibrant community of creators on their Discord server. Learn more and start designing your game using their free tutorial by visiting cogs.show. Link and details in the show notes.
I don't want to explore too much about what the Alchemist is, because I do believe that it is best experienced as you made it. You and your team put so much into it. But there are a couple of things I want to zero in on, just very surface level things that people see more or less immediately. The first is that you put thought into everything, even the way that you gather phones from players, which I usually hate. Usually I'm just like, I'm going to leave my phone in my pocket, just leave me alone. But I didn't mind in your game because it was so beautifully done. Can you talk a little bit about the way that you've approached that?
So we have a little cabinet outside in the hallway, and it's locked with a lock. You can find the key somewhere, and then you can open it up. And then it says a little device that you need. That is your communication system, but it's locked away. And the only way you can unlock it is by placing your phones in there, because we say you're going to do a very dangerous ritual, and the radiation from this ritual will probably fry your phones. So put it in here. This is a Faraday cage. If you put it in here, we can keep it safe. And then by putting them in, it's always set to the amount of players that you have in your team. Then it will start to activate the mechanism that lowers a hatch. And the hatch will lock your phones away, but it will release your system of communication. And from that moment, you can continue.
On top of all of that, this interaction does two other things that I love. The first is that you have, in all of the little cubbies, there's wireless charging. So your phone is charging while you are in there, and you don't have to plug it in.
Yeah. It's in story.
Yep.
Because the ritual is such a burst of electromagnetic energy that perhaps your phones now have a bit more charge than they used to.
Love it.
I had a long discussion with Victor saying, we don't have money anymore. And then he said, but people will love it. And then I would say, like, 1 out of 10 people will notice. And he said, for them, we do it. So I'm very happy that you mentioned this now. It's something that you love.
There you go, helping you get your return on investment. The second thing that I really love about this, and I don't want to necessarily expound upon it too much, but there is an aesthetic to this box that for me initially felt out of place, but then became part of the story and helped me understand what I was going into. And I really appreciated that. It's just very emblematic of the amount of thought that went into this.
Thanks. Not everyone gets it. They'll still give us like a 10 out of 10, which is great on like the local platform Escape Talk. But they will mention that there's one element that feels anachronistic or out of style. And we're like, oh, you didn't make the connection. But I'm glad you did.
Yeah, and actually the little cabinet we found in the attic of this historical building, because they have a lot of furniture there that is not used, but it has to stay in this historical building because of the atmosphere it's in, because it's related to this era. And when we ask, we sometimes get something that we can work with.
Yeah, so on the outside, it is chronistic. It's not anachronistic. It fits in the period.
Yeah.
The second thing about The Alchemist that I want to point out is that there are so many magical moments in it that there is an early one that everyone who plays it forgets. And it feels really powerful in the moment. But so much happens in this game that it just gets wiped from your memory. And I hadn't even remembered it until, I think, Victor, you were talking about it at Recon with me. And I was like, oh, I completely forgot that this was there. And I think that is a testament to the amount of magic that you have pumped into your magic game.
I'll take it. Yeah, it's an interesting question because me and Gijs sometimes have the conversations. If a player doesn't realize something, does it exist? And I'm usually on the side of like, if your player doesn't realize the story, then it doesn't exist. So, of course, backstory is another thing, but we try to be quite strict in getting the things that we want people to get across. And so if people forget about this thing at the end, I'm not sure. I don't mind.
I think the effect in the moment.
Yeah.
I think it's the effect in the moment because I think the main room of The Alchemist is gorgeous. And I think that the way that is revealed to you matters. And I think that the magic that goes into that helps to make that more poignant, even if people don't remember that. I think it's sort of like having a beautiful curtain on a stage. People aren't there for the curtain, but the way that that curtain draws matters.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And it's in the moment is how people experience it. And I think there's a lot of things that we try to do in our rooms that maybe you won't notice because they're there, right? So, for example, we have these little drawers, and 4 of them are fake. 2 of them you can open. But there is an effect in the drawer that if you wiggle the fake ones, it feels like it's locked, like it's a locked drawer. These kinds of things we love to put in, because if you would use it, you would wiggle it and it doesn't move, then it will take you out of it. But now you will just accept it as, oh, this is a drawer, it's locked, I don't need to do anything with this. And I think there's many of these things where if we don't do them, you notice. When we do them, you won't notice, but you will be more immersed.
You guys are so extra. Speaking of extra things that you do, players, when they complete your games, they get one of the best mementos that I've seen in escape rooms. You get a crossed key pin, which is uniquely numbered, and you're only given these when you finish the game. So what was the inspiration behind creating a souvenir like this?
We wanted to create a little secret society of mystery lovers and mystery makers. And that's something we actually haven't gotten to completely, but we have the plan for it. And we are now in our 10-year anniversary year. And this is an important one that we want to expound on, that we want to take these, I think, 30,000 members of the secret society and really create something special for them. The early vision was that you would show up in different places in Amsterdam and kind of subtly flash your crossed keys pin, and it would unlock something for you, be it a special kind of a drink or actually a hidden basement where people could explore something new.
Still something we'd love to do.
Exactly. We just haven't gotten to it yet. But perhaps with the success of The Alchemist, which is a very relieving thing to be able to say, perhaps we'll be able to get to it this time around.
We are working on a website where you can register your crossed keys with their unique number. And there are probably events in the future where we want to specifically invite people that hold the crossed keys.
Yes, one that we already know is going to be an enchanted masked ball where for key holders only. And there will be missions and quests and hidden dimensions for those who pay attention.
Well, when I come finally to play The Alchemist and I'm wearing my crossed keys pin, I'm going to expect that drink at the door.
Deal.
You have an experience called the Lost Cabinet, which is a secret menu item, at least as of recording. You have to know to ask for it. It's not on your website.
Correct.
Tell us about this creation, because the thing is beautiful, but it isn't for everybody.
Yeah, it's our little COVID hobby project.
So we had during COVID a team of students that we worked with, and they had this assignment to create something that we could cycle to people's houses. That was the original idea. We wanted to create something that you could play at home, but it was like more intricate. And then we thought if we make it super beautiful, then we would want to be able to rent it out and you could play it at home and we could pick it back up. Because during COVID, of course, no one could play and you couldn't really go far outside of your houses. So that was the original idea. And then it got a little bit out of hand.
Yeah, because we also had on our payroll, we had an incredibly talented woodworker.
Yeah.
A craftsperson.
Incredibly talented is an understatement. This thing is a true work of art.
Yeah, I agree. And as a testament to his skill.
And you can find images in the show notes.
Oh, nice.
Ooh, nice.
But it just took so much time to make that the pandemic was over by the time that it was finished.
I think originally we thought maybe it's cool if we can make multiple, and then we made it like super beautiful, and now it's not really doable to make multiple.
Yeah.
But we're very proud of it. And basically what it is still a chest. I think the recommended amount of players will be 2 or 3. And the story is that this is one of those pieces of furniture that was kept in our historical building, but nobody could ever take a look at it because we think it was left behind by the alchemist. But nobody can take a look at it normally because it's locked away in the attic. But there's this one window of opportunity where they are moving different pieces of furniture out of the building for maintenance. And there's this one moment where your associate can take this box out of that moving van and bring it to you for an hour and a half to solve. And then if you've solved it, you have to put everything back, and then we can put it back into the van as quickly as possible so nobody will know that you've touched it. And then it's an hour and a half adventure in which you can discover all kinds of things about Mary, our alchemist.
It is sort of a prequel to The Alchemist.
Or a sequel.
Yeah, we've got 2 versions. If you play it as a prequel, you get the thing that you guys got. And if you play it as a sequel, you get something else.
Interesting. Broadly speaking, Dutch escape rooms are synonymous with psychological horror and darker games. And it's a style that I genuinely enjoy. But I truly appreciate that Sherlocked does an entirely unique thing. You've never made a horror game, which, in fact, your games are very light. What's driving this? What is your relationship with this style that has become so prevalent in the Dutch escape room community?
For us, it's that we want to make things that we actually would really want to play ourselves. And neither of us likes horror that much. I think that is the biggest driver.
Yeah, and it's solidified by the fact that other people do enjoy making those games. Gijs, Alex, Eric, lots of people in the Netherlands, Laurent. So they should be making those games, and we will make what we personally want to make. And that way it becomes a very rich ecosystem.
You've been involved with Ruud Krol of Diorama Games in producing some of the most interesting tabletop puzzle games that we've played, the Vandermeer Dossier and the Medusa Report. How did this collaboration come about?
We've been friends for ages. He was one of the first teams to come play the Architect, and he had already discovered escape rooms around the same time as we did, and he was thinking of building his own. But then he had this vision. This is in 2014, before Juliana and Ariel had launched their Kickstarter for Escape Room in a Box. He was also thinking of how can we take these mechanics of storytelling and puzzling in a tabletop format. So he was also one of the pioneers of this now established format. And he very early on showed to us a keen eye and incredible talent for creating interesting and original puzzles. And so we asked him to join Sherlocked, I think in 2015, as maybe one of our first colleagues to work on the Vault and the Port game as a game designer. And that's how we know each other. And he was at that time already saying, I would love to do this home mystery thing. And then those projects wrapped, and he went to focus on those, on his first home mystery on his own, which is under the Diorama flag, or at the time Puzzle Post. He was one of the most disciplined designers in the world, I think, in terms of story native puzzles. Everything is thought through so well, and everything has a good justification for being the way it is. He has such an eye for detail and such a high bar for himself in terms of the materials and the graphic design that he uses. He's a maestro, and we've always appreciated that about him to a great length.
Yes, a couple of years ago, he approached us with the question that he wanted to be sure to be focusing on designing again. And he noticed that he was mostly focusing on the operational running of the business, and that didn't bring him joy anymore. So he asked us if we wanted to acquire the games.
Yeah. And they had not all been translated yet. So it was all Dutch spoken, this trilogy that he made, because we're talking about a trilogy. They were all Dutch. He'd done one Kickstarter for the first English one, the Vandermeer Dossier, where he got a lot of appreciation. But then we decided to go for it with the acquisition, which was our first and so far only acquisition. And we are still paying off we're almost done paying off the debt for that. But yeah, we really wanted to make sure that those games got a good home from people who really appreciate the fanaticism that he's applied as a designer. And we banded together to do the Kickstarter of the second game, and that was a big success. That was also nice to see that with our combined forces, we could reach an even bigger audience, and that was very exciting. And now we've been working together on the translation. Ruud's getting it ready for its Kickstarter early next year.
And this is the Nightingale Pact?
Yes, the Nightingale Pact. I love the name in English. In Dutch, it's called the kind of like the Wild Man's Secret, but there is no wild man in the story. So the Nightingale Pact makes a lot more sense, and it sounds very sexy, I think.
And it makes sense in the story, but you'll have to play it to understand.
Okay, so 2025. I look forward to checking it out.
Coming to your doorstep.
Victor, at the top of the episode, you mentioned your habit of free climbing buildings. What's the story there?
It's related to my love of escape rooms. I love elevated cinematic life. It was kind of the way I survived high school, because it felt very gray and drab to me, and I felt very much in a straitjacket, which was mostly my perception. I mean, other kids were having a great time. I just felt very stuck in a system, and I'd always taken movies a little bit more seriously somehow than other people. So I loved, for instance, Aladdin as a kid. that inspired me to climb rooftops because he lived on a roof, and that was very romantic and free in my mind. And one of my favorite movies was the Thomas Crown Affair, which is an elaborate and very elegant heist movie. And that made me very excited about finding the crevices or air conditioning vents in my high school. And together with my little group of friends, we staged elaborate heists where some of us would be on the lookout, and me and my best friend would be in the AC ducts, and we would enter the classroom during a break. And we'd already figured out the code lock to the briefcase of our maths teacher, which is very escape roomy. And then we would find the prototype of a test that was about to be given. It was like cut and pasted onto a piece of A4 paper. So we couldn't steal it. We had to rush through the AC ducts to the library where they had a copy machine, and the bell would ring and we'd be too late to enter the class. And so our friends would be distracting the teacher while we actually under the table would put the test back in the briefcase. But anyway, I love this idea of kind of cinematic, making your life a little bit more cinematic. And that's what made me excited about carefully climbing rooftops, as well as I think that's also why I got very excited by the idea of creating a live space where a story had to unfold in the real world, which was escape rooms.
Having gotten to know both of you fairly well over the years, I'm deeply impressed by the way that you support one another. What is it that each of you is bringing to the table at this point that the other finds incomprehensible?
I can start. Francine has an incredible sense of overview. She can almost predict the future. So she knows what's going to happen if we make certain decisions, sometimes to her own frustration, because she'll see problems coming and will still fall into those traps sometimes. She's one of the smartest people I know. So she has a mind with bandwidth that is unmatched. So yeah, that's unfathomable to me. And that's combined with, like she said, an intuition for what works and what's fun, which is what we have in common, I hope. Yeah, that's just to name a few things.
Thank you. Victor's also very smart, which makes it easier to communicate, which I love. But what Victor is really excellent in is what we call awesomifying things, which means that in any project, if there is a moment where I feel like, okay, I have the overview, I understand what's what, I understand how everything fits together, but it feels like there's this one thing missing that actually makes it really cool, then I can call Victor over and give him a 5-sentence rundown of what we're doing. And then he can, within 10 seconds, like bring in something that makes it amazing. It's really cool.
Thank you.
So, Victor and Francine, what's the best way for people to follow you and your work and to connect with you?
Multiple ways. Us personally, add us on LinkedIn, because that's where we post little updates about what we're working on ourselves. And I think for Sherlocked, our Instagram is sometimes we reach out there and put some interesting stuff on there. Actually, before the Alchemist launched, we did a massive puzzle campaign there with lots of fun prizes. And we would love to revive that when we have the headspace for it. So yeah, even if we don't do something with it now, follow our Instagram, because it will be the place where we would put interesting puzzles and cool behind the scenes stories once in a while.
And the third one would be to subscribe to our newsletter.
Yeah, that's actually maybe the number one. You're right. That's the most consistent one, which you can access at the bottom of our website, sherlocked.nl. It's also where we will announce the Enchanted Masked Ball.
I'll be looking for that. And we will put the links for all of that in the show notes.
Wonderful.
Victor and Francine, thank you both so much. Victor, thank you for being the guinea pig all the way at the beginning of all of this, back when I was not ready to commit to this. And thank you both for everything that you've done for the community, for the incredible talk that you gave at Recon, for the diligence and care that you put into every single thing that you do. The games that you made in the early years, The Architect and The Vault, I deeply believe shaped the future of European escape rooms. And I believe that The Alchemist is one of the games that will shape the next 10 years. I am in awe of the games that you make and the kindness that you bring throughout the process of making them. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
This episode of Reality Escape Pod is produced by Teresa Piazza with support by Lisa Spira and Matthew Stein. We're edited by Steve Ewing of Stand Inside Media, music by Ryan Elder, logo by Janine Proct, and all of this is brought to you by RoomEscapeArtist.com, your home for well-researched, rational, and reasonably humorous escape room and immersive gaming content and events. Reality Escape Pod is mainly supported by Patreon backers. Creating these episodes takes a lot of time, care, and money. We're invested in creating a robust community of creators and enthusiasts, and we need your help. A lot of big content creators, they reach a point where their Patreon is so big that they don't know who is joining. I promise you, we are aware every single time someone backs us. We know who our long-term backers are. We send out handwritten letters, wax sealed by hand, to every single person who backs us on Patreon. We, as a team, celebrate every single person who joins because it means so much to us. The ongoing support that we get from our patrons is everything. It is so hard building a media business in this era, and we are only able to do it because of the continued support of so many wonderful people. And if you have not yet joined, I hope that you can consider it if it's something that you can afford. And for everybody who is supporting, we do provide a lot of extra content that we put a lot of love into. Every single episode has a bonus after show. In between seasons, we also make extra bonus content that only goes out to patrons. And we also have, for our higher level supporters, the Spoilers Club, where we dig deep into escape rooms and talk about everything that went into the making of them, the running of them, and the behind the scenes with the creators. Both shows are a labor of love, just like the one that you just listened to. To learn more, visit patreon.com/roomescapeartist. Link and details in the show notes. I would also like to thank our highest level Patreon supporters: Karen, Byron Delmonico, Mark from Keystone Escape Games, Paula Swan, Rex Miller, Chris Laughlin, Panic Room, Pat at Olivier Escape, Escaparium, Breakout Games, and Derek Tam. Thank you for your ongoing support. If you're looking for a way to support Reality Escape Pod that doesn't cost a dime, go on to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a 5-star review. Bonus points if you say some kind words. We put so much love into every single episode, and it means the world when you tell other people that this show is worth listening to. There's a lot of podcasts out there, and social proof matters. Your words matter. They help us immensely.
For 10 years, we've had the privilege of having an amazing game master called Sam on our team, and he's recently left, but he's a legend on the team, and his legacy lives on. One intervention that he came up with in a moment in the vault, where there's a moment where we separate people from the main space by locking them with a chain in a fence from the other space. And there's, of course, an emergency exit. We're not actually locking people in, but this is believable that they're locked in. And then usually there's a way to get a key and to open that gate again, but the lock malfunctioned. And Sam, instead of letting them go out via the emergency room, he grabbed an angle grinder, put on a ski mask, and in the role of the accomplice who you were in touch with over the walkie-talkie said, "Okay, guys, I'm coming in." And he came in, started grinding the chain lock, let it fall to the, like sparks falling all over the room.
Everywhere. Oh my God.
And afterwards, people were like, "This is so freaking immersive. You do this every time." And we were like, "You're the right team."
We have a picture of this to share with you.
Exactly. That was the most rock and roll moment in the very legendary tenure of Sam.
You can find that picture in the show notes.